Let's get down to business.
Hey guys, welcome to the Image X podcast, where we take a deep dive look into all things nutrition, S&C, health and performance. And today I'm joined by Darren, Kenna. Darren, welcome.
How are you doing? Thanks, Emil, for having me on.
Great, thanks for coming out in your busy schedule. I know you're super busy with your new business and changing nappies, I'd say, as well. Good man.
Sorry, we won't say which one's more important.
So Darren, can you just give us a quick brief on your journey so far within the health and fitness and S&C? And yeah, go for it.
Absolutely, yeah. Thanks again for having me out. I know you've got a long list of people you were looking to get on the podcast, so privileged to be asked, and I think I'm first on. So
you are, yeah. Great, happy days. So bear with us.
Yeah, no, yeah. So cheers for that. My journey, I started, I suppose, like everybody, most people. I played sport, was into sport, wasn't the most talented or skillful, but I worked very hard at the things that didn't require talent. So kind of fell down the S&C route then after that. Got involved. I was working at the time as a development coach in rugby. That was the sport I played. So basically going around to schools, trying to get non-rugby playing schools, playing rugby through Leinster. They were really good employers, and they put forward a chance to go and do the IRFU certified conditioning coach. And at the time, again, I was a skills coach. I loved the gym myself, that type of thing. So I was like, yeah, I'll be all over that. Yeah. Did that course. It's still going now. It's a great entry-level S&C course, but at the time it was one of the very few that was going on. And because there were so few strength and conditioning coaches in the country, you were getting access to guys that were at the coalface in the provinces or with the national team or having recently been in the national team. So you were getting great experience. And then when I completed that, I had a whole load of guinea pigs and all the skills that I was working with that I could go and try and practice it on and write loads of really crap programs and put them through for a few weeks and then realise that was crap and write one that was a little bit better next time and all that type of thing.
Yeah. You spent a good bit of time in Oz.
Yeah. So fast forward then a couple of years, qualified as a physical therapist. Things were going well with Leinster, and Laura, my now wife, tipped me on the shoulder and said, let's go to Oz. And going, no, everything's going well here. Right. Went over there and I said, right, well, if we're going to go, I'm going to make this work. So she went over ahead of me. I finished my physical therapy exams, followed her over and was keen to take advantage of what I knew was a huge industry over there. Got as many phone numbers and email addresses as I could before going over, and then just hounded people from the moment I landed to meet for a coffee or to get in and let me watch a gym session or anything at all I could, and eventually managed to kind of get my foot in a few doors, and it went well.
Excellent. Yeah, so you mentioned that you spent a bit of time in Oz, and I guess one of the things Oz and the practices of S&C are probably up there as far as how good they are. Can you kind of go through maybe any stark differences between the practices within S&C and what we currently kind of do with, say, in the GAA, or even with your hockey ladies that when you worked with, which we'll touch upon shortly, but just in particular because S&C within Oz has really been up there. Is there anything that jumps out at you that you felt that was something that you were able to bring back to say Ireland, or with the qualifications that you had, and that you thought, like, you know what, this is not really being done that much, or anything that you felt was useful? Yeah,
I think it's still such a young industry in Ireland, but as you say, in Oz it's a little bit more established. I think Australia and the States are pretty much the go-to places for where you look to see what's at the cutting edge and what's at the coalface. And a lot of it comes down to, they don't just have an S&C coach, they'll have an S&C team. Or they don't just have a physio, they'll have a medical team, So with that gives scope for there to be progression. And in my case, when I went over and eventually got involved in AFL, I was the dumbest person in the room, which was great, because I just had all these really experienced practitioners that, as long as I was willing to show up every day and put in the hours, I could learn a huge amount from. And like that, when they saw you were eager to learn and hard working, they were more than willing to put the time into you Because
I think that's a huge point. I think because one of the things I learned from an ex-colleague of ours, Owen Lacey, like learn from everybody else. And I think one of the best things that I ever did as a strength coach was just hire a strength coach. And in those practices there like that, it's great to see that you're willing to put yourself, in those positions to learn. You mentioned at AFL, you played rugby, yourself. You also then worked with the Olympic hockey team, the ladies team. Can you tell us what it was like maybe transitioning from, say, a sport that you probably never actually really played, and then applying all those S&C principles that you would have learned for, say, an S&C coach who's listening now, and they go, well, like I've never actually played this particular sport, but how would I, integrate the things that I've learned without seeming like I don't understand what I'm talking about. You know what I mean?
Yeah, and it's one of those things. Nobody wants to come across vulnerable, and nobody. People are terrible at saying I don't know something or I need help with this. You want to come across as an expert all the time. So first of all, it's letting your ego go. I think in today's times it's never been so easy to learn from experts because the internet, like podcast conversations like what we're having, you can, if me and you all of a sudden tomorrow become the national badminton S&C coaches, we can just go and do a deep dive on what are the Chinese doing in badminton or something. I'm pretty sure the Chinese Olympic winning badminton S&C coaches out on a couple of podcasts out there somewhere, so we can very quickly get up to speed on things from the comfort of our own living room, whereas 10 years ago that wasn't necessarily an option. So I remember when I first got involved in AFL, it was with the Sydney Swans and with their senior team, and again I was just shadowing, and it was one of the first sessions of pre-season, and they'd have the sessions really well planned out. I was handed an A4 sheet of paper and it just had a load of different running drills on it. When I say drills, conditioning, like absolutely flogging them. And I was handed the piece of paper, handed a whistle and said, okay, those 6 guys, Darren, you're taking them, do exactly what's on the sheet. I don't even think I was asked any questions. It was just the Aussie way, do what's on the sheet. Looked at what was on the sheet. It was like an insane amount of volume. It just looked absolutely horrendous. Very little rest. And I'm going, like, your man kind of walked off at this stage and I'm trying to call him back. And then as I'm trying to call him back, I'm looking down the sheet going, Jesus Christ. And then I get to the bottom and it's like by 4. And I'm like, oi. I'm like, nah, this is wrong. This has got to be a misprint or something. And he's just looking at me going, like, again, without saying it, he's like, you know nothing, just do what you're told and you'll be fine. And I'm thinking, from textbooks and all, this is too much volume, blah, blah, blah. But a sport that I'd never worked in, I didn't appreciate how much volume they're able to handle compared to rugby and GAA and stuff that I would have seen domestically in Ireland. This was a whole nother level. Yeah,
because when you read textbooks, you always talk about, the physical demands of sports and X, Y, and Z. But then, it's one thing to be reading the textbooks, but then, as you said, then when you get into the practical-based stuff and you're actually on the sidelines with these athletes, like you get a real kind of indication of what you're dealing with. And I guess it comes back to, like you said, leave your ego at the door, get yourself somewhere, shadow an S&C coach, and whether it's a sport you have or haven't played, you'll probably take loads from it.
But it just goes to show, if on that day he'd given me a blank piece of paper and said, you decide what running they're doing, or a whiteboard, and you design the session, I would have been so far off the mark because it wouldn't have been enough. So again, from then, I was like, okay, I just need to shut up here, do exactly what I'm told, learn as much as I can, ask the right questions, and just show up every day. And again, at the end of that session, like I said, there's a team of S&C coaches. I was walking down the corridor chatting to one of the coaches, and an Irish guy stuck his head out of one of the rooms. He's like, oi, who are you? His name was Steve Kelly. He was the head S&C of their academy.
Right.
And he was like, what are you doing tonight? I was like, nothing, I suppose. And he was like, do you want to come and train the academy at 7? I was like, yeah, absolutely. And again, so that work ethic, I was just a show up. And again, shadowed him for a couple of sessions, and very quickly like that, he was a little bit kind of under-resourced at the time. He was like, never mind shadowing. He was like, get in there and coach. I was like, hey, what is this? This is amazing, And then he was really, really, really good on the conditioning end of things and the running and all that. I was very comfortable in the weight room, and I felt like that was
Yeah.
where I was stronger, and I was probably weaker planning and conditioning. So the two of us
That's a great point. I mean, I think a lot of S&C coaches are very, and especially in Ireland, are very, very comfortable in the weight room. But it's like, how are they able to, differentiate those different aspects of athletes in terms of what they have to do on the pitch that kind of will correlate to their sport, and what they're doing in the weight room, and how that transfers onto the pitch itself. With that in mind, can you give us a quick kind of, I guess, a quick brief on Agora and how the hockey week would look for your ladies? I mean, let's not overshadow like the success that you had with the Olympic ladies. Your hockey team, that was amazing. And it's just interesting to hear how from year 1 to 4, anything from the performance testing that you did with them to anything that even your learning curve, for the likes of any listeners now that are looking to get involved, even in hockey, because hockey's got it, you've really put it on the map, and then you as an S&C coach, their S&C coach, and for us all listening now, like as S&C coaches, like, well, okay, how did Darren get there, and what did he do when he was there? You know what I mean? So, which is interesting. So
I was listening. It was an incredibly talented group of players, a really good group of staff, and I was just it was a little bit of right place, right time. I'd come off the back of a huge amount of experience that I gained in kind of 3.5, 4 years in Australia. At being exposed to quite a high level. Like I said, I was probably the dumbest person in the room, but I was surrounded by a lot of experts. So when I came back, I had all this information and all these training methods that I knew were proven, I knew were worked, and I couldn't wait to implement them. And then it was a case of going, okay, well, stripping it back and saying, right, well, these girls are part-time, they're all either...
Yeah, that's so really interesting to know about that. How
like it was...
the balance.
Yeah, well, first of all, I had a head coach who was great, who empowered me and gave me the time and stuff to do what I needed to do, and had full faith and full trust in me. Yeah. We got on really well personally from day one, and then he just trusted that I knew what I was doing, and if there was ever an issue, he'd say it, and if there wasn't, so that was great first and foremost. I wasn't having to fight battles or anything like that.
What would a typical week look like for your girls? So let's say some of them are day jobs, right?
So we started, like I started with them in July of 2016. Yeah. From July of 2016, what a typical week looked like to July of 2020, when we should have been 1 month out from Tokyo, is totally different. Do you know that kind of way? Yeah. So the program itself evolved, but at the start it was very amateur in the sense that they would maybe train 1 night a week as a national squad, but it would be broken up in their provinces. Yeah. So it was almost like having an extra club nights training. Yeah. Whether you're a Gaelic player or a rugby player, an amateur rugby player, regardless of sport, it's you train 3 nights a week rather than 2. Yeah. And then they would play their club game on the weekend on a Saturday, and then they would have national training then on a Sunday. That would usually be a double session. So it might be a 10 a.m. session for 2 hours, then have an hour or 2 off, and then have another 2-hour session. Okay. That was a kind of a standard week back then. Fast forward to 2020, they got increased funding, increased sponsorship off the back of the success at the World Cup. But leading up to the World Cup was an interesting one because we were very, very amateur. We didn't have a whole lot of time to train, and we were just trying to make the best of what we could with the small amount of time, resources, extremely hard working staff, and the players made enormous sacrifice. A lot of them, none of them were doing cushy college courses. They were all doing medicine or law and stuff like that. So that was the cohort that were in college, and then the ones that were actually working, again, nobody was working a handy job. It was all pretty demanding stuff.
So it would have been like quite a lot of remote training.
A lot of remote training, So we set up centres.
Everything would have had to have been thrown in there, and like being able to monitor their training load. I mean, and then like they're working, and then they're essentially competing with professionals, which again is another testament to you and to all your athletes, which is great to hear. It just goes to show like what could they have potentially done if they were a professional outfit, you know what I mean? And you would compare them to the likes of, I think it was the Netherlands. They were a very strong team, and so like I mean, I guess you got to strive for, you know, you're looking at the top teams, and you guys were there and thereabouts.
Yeah.
I mean, I know we always hate to go back to like talking about sport and basketball, my sport, the lack of resources, but I mean, you put the sport on the map, which is great. And
yeah, well, from my end, I wasn't going to use the lack of resources as an excuse, and I knew what training at an elite level looked like, so I had to transfer that then to hockey, and like that, you know, there was a couple of guys that had gone before me, like Ben Rosenblatt was one, successful coach. He's now working with the English FA, but he was in charge of English women's hockey of Great Britain. And again, he had written articles, he'd been guest on podcasts. I used to pore over his work to pull out any information I could. And again, we set up simple things regionally, so it didn't matter whether you were in training in Cork, training in Limerick, training in Dublin, training in Ulster. We had the same kind of tests or same measures that we wanted to check in on. So again, you wouldn't necessarily see them the whole time, but you wanted to have a feel for where they were at. Okay, and again, as simple as, are you getting 2 gym sessions a week? Okay, because if you're not, there's no point in worrying about what you're doing in the gym if you're not making it to the gym.
And how difficult was it to be able to, you said, knowing what they're at, and so obviously there had to be a level of, like, you know, you had to measure certain things, whether it was the load, you know, their training load, or the, you know, the tonnage, what they're lifting. But when you look at performance, you want to be able to bring to your manager or your superior and say, look, this is what the performance indicators are, this is what they're at. So with that in mind, people always wonder, well, like, what are some of the best, you know, best is probably a wrong word. What were the performance tests that you used that you felt got the best bang for the buck? Yeah,
well, again, you've got to look at where you want to be and what you're measuring yourself against. And the real shift was to be like, okay, rather than train to the standard of the Irish women's hockey team, which at the time, no disrespect, had achieved absolutely nothing. We're not going to train to that standard. We're actually going to set the bar different. And again, potentially 1 or 2 people didn't like it, but it was like, listen, either get on the bus or get off the bus, because we're going to take it to another level. It's not going to be easy, you know, and thankfully the majority of people did row into it. Testing wise, again, that was another bone of contention at times. It had previously been a bone of contention, particularly around endurance testing, like with yo-yo, intermittent recovery. That was kind of what we used for. A lot of players had massive hang-ups over, but you're going, listen, if you're getting hung up on a fitness test, how are you going to perform under pressure? So a lot of my time was trying to make that correlation to players. They had a rule at the time, the coach I mentioned, Graham Shaw, he brought in a rule that you needed to hit level 17 to be eligible to train for the Irish squad. And you needed to hit level 18 to play for the Irish squad. And that put the fear of God into a lot of players. And then they would, I've seen people have actual panic attacks and breakdowns on the morning of a test. And again, I'm trying to correlate, listen, this is not about the test, but what happens to you if you're in a playoff match with 2 minutes to go and you're a goal down? How are you going to handle that pressure? All I'm asking you to do here is run up and down a couple of times. Tell me, do you like to use jump tests? Kind of jump test? Reason for your jump test other than looking at power output? Or so, like, I think to reference another colleague of ours, John Connor, he used to always say, be obsessed with the outcome rather than the exercise, and in this case, what are you trying to test? And then let's look at the different ways of testing it. So in jump testing, really, I suppose you're trying to test your power. And like I said, easiest way to do that is a broad jump if you've no equipment. We would have done counter movement jump. One of the things we did to manage all the remote athletes around the country was we used the push bands and the push device, which is velocity sensor. So I knew players in Cork, players in Ulster, players in Dublin every Wednesday or more pre-gym. So I think we used to gym on a Tuesday, Thursday. Just it wasn't that long ago and I've forgotten now already. But you know, they'd come in, do their warm-up, do their jump test, and then you got a measure for their readiness. You could see who was fatiguing in a given week. You could see who was peaking in a given week. Obviously, as we were getting closer to major tournaments, we were trying to peak. So I was hoping and praying and my fingers crossed that our jumps were going in the right direction. But again, looking at it, just because you don't have, like, I didn't have velocity bands at the start, so we still tested it with a broad jump, and that was pretty simple, you know. So looking at what do you want to test, power, and then decide how you go from that, you know.
And what's your take on implement, and this might have been harder for you doing things remotely, because again, they're athletes and we're not trying to train them to be weightlifters. You know, I think a lot of people kind of misinterpret it. When you're training athletes, you're training them obviously for performance, build resilience, robustness. Olympic lifting and derivatives. For yourself as an S&C, go.
Don't do them.
Okay.
So I love them myself. I've competed poorly in Olympic lifting, both here in Dublin and in Australia. I emphasise poorly. But I love Olympic lifting myself as something to do. From not playing sport anymore, it's good. It gives me competitive in my training, even if it's just competitive with my own numbers. But for players, there's so much easier ways. Again, that quote from John, you know, be obsessed with the outcome rather than the exercise. So what's the outcome we're looking to get from Olympic lifting? And when you strip it all back, we're looking for triple extension. Do you know? For those that don't know, that's ankle, knee, hip, full extension. So if we jump in the air, do a box jump, you're going to get triple extension. The majority of team sport athletes you see doing Olympic lifting aren't getting triple extension. End of argument. Doesn't matter how much you're lifting, doesn't matter what you're doing. They do it badly. The All Blacks, probably one of the few teams that consistently do hang cleans and stuff like that and do them well. But again, that's a deeper process, you know. So if maybe they have that baked into their academy structure or that type of thing. So if I inherited a team that had been Olympic lifting and were already competent, I'd probably go, yeah, fair enough. I had a couple of kind of thing, like I had a goalkeeper, and I had a couple of athletes that, when I say a goalkeeper, I had a CrossFitter and a couple of athletes that had been through the collegiate system in the States in our squad that were very, very competent Olympic lifters. So we kept some hang cleans in their program. And the rest of them are going, oh, can I do what she's doing? And going, well, it's going to take weeks to do that, and I can just actually get you to do a trap bar jump, or I can get you to do a squat jump.
Trap bar jump, you definitely go
And like that, I'd put the push band, so you can use it for the jumps, attach it to a waistband, or you can put it on the bar and it'll act as a velocity sensor on the bar. And I would take the clean and I would take the trap bar jump, and I go, we're achieving the same velocity.
Happy days.
So it just takes out the argument altogether. And then you might say to someone, okay, when you can clean with that velocity, I'll let you do that. And then they do, oh, that hurts my wrists, or do you know what, that kind of way. Pick up a trap bar, do you know what I mean?
Factors,
we've both got young kids, we could probably take them outside now. As soon as they can walk, and they'll be able to do it, you know. So it just involves an awful lot less coaching. The worst thing you could do as an S&C coach is waste time in the gym. Your time is so valuable, especially in Ireland. You get such little time, such little access with them, so it needs to be really bang for your buck. And like we said, very few of us get the chance to work full time with athletes. So they're coming in either before a day's work or after a day's work. If they're coming in before a day's work, chances are they trained late the previous night. You don't want to be wasting their time, you know. Get them in the minimal effective dose. So what's the least amount I need to get you to do to get the desired outcome?
Yeah, perfect. I love that. Yeah.
You know?
And come here, tell me, so training, you would have trained a lot of male athletes, and then obviously with your hockey girls being female, is there anything, say you could, you know, anything that jumped out training female athletes versus training male athletes? It's always a hot topic, you know, and for you has plenty of practical experience. Is there any advice that you can give to any listeners, you know, if they're switching from genders at all? Is there anything at all? If not,
there's loads. Again, it goes back to the earlier point about jumping from one sport to another, jumping from male to female. Look at the experts in the field and figure out what they've found works, rather than trying to figure it all out yourself from scratch. So I looked at, you know, what books there were and different things. There was a very good one from Mark Verstegen, who formed Exos. I think it was Core Performance for Women. He wrote a book, Core Performance, and then there was a secondary version for women. And I'd used Core Performance before, and I found this. I said, well, this is perfect, because I know that last book inside out. So now I can just see what are the intricacies he's talking about and all, and he's gone away and solved this problem and written a book on it. So why don't I just read the bloody book? One of the big things he talked about was typically they handle a little bit more volume than guys. So, like, you know, if we're looking at strength work for male athletes, and we're kind of talking in the 3 to 5 or 3 to 6 rep range, typically your females, you might want to push them more the 5 to 8 rep range. Or again, for your guys, if you're talking hypertrophy 10 to 12s, get your females going 12 to 15. Do a little bit more dumbbell work rather than barbell work, because typically speaking, they don't have the same training age in the weight room as what guys do. I imagine like that's already changed, because fitness industry and gym, it's just like there's transition year students that's their sport now, you know.
Yeah.
Whereas when we were in transition year, even if you were playing high level sport and you went to the gym, you were a bit of an outlier. Whereas now, gym is people's sport, so it's probably not going to be as much of an issue. I see most women I see these days are more competent with a barbell than fellas are. But that was one of the things, was use more dumbbell work than bars, because if they get into trouble on an incline dumbbell press or something, they can just throw them to the side. That was really good advice, you know, and I'd still employ that a lot with beginner lifters, male and female. So there was a couple of key technical things like that. Then on the coaching side of things, like in Australia, it was the coaching style was very aggressive, very male-driven environment, lots of testosterone, you know, loud noises, like you just and that's how you got the best out of players, and you didn't necessarily care whether a player liked you or not, or whether he disliked you, as long as he did the work. And if it meant like roaring at him and calling him every name under the sun to get him to do the work, in that kind of male environment, that works. And they kind of
coaching style was a big thing. It's like, you know, kind of know your audience.
Yeah, but it was one of the best things that ever happened to me, because I relied very heavily on that, particularly coaching academy kids. It was, you know, and I talked about me and Steve, and I was definitely the bad cop, but we got the work done.
Yeah,
I came back and I had to. There was no way I could chat to a group of females like that, not in a million years.
Yeah.
So I'd be standing in the middle of the gym floor and I'd find myself, and then I'd go, no, and I'd have to be like, oh my God, how am I going to address this?
Changing your coaching style.
Totally changing my coaching style, yeah.
I think it's an underrated skill, and it's something that I think a lot of S&C coaches, even when they're just training female and male clients, and then it's kind of like, where do you bring that militant style, where do you bring that more nurturing style of coaching? And then, but again, it's like, you know, how do you maximize the results for these clients?
But it made me a better coach, because moving, like coaching a sport that I didn't play, forced me to think a little bit more about the technicalities of what I was prescribing, and then having to coach where I couldn't just shout and curse. Yeah. And I had to actually deal with personalities, because you shout and curse at most females, what's going to happen? Yeah. You know?
It's not going to end well.
Yeah, well, you know, you'll either get a slap or there'll be tears, one or the other. Whereas you shout at a guy and he'll go, well, I'm going to show you.
Yeah.
You know, so it was trying to read the room, and I suppose regardless of whether it's a male or a female team, it's to know your audience and know your team, and spend time to get to know them, and maybe don't come in quite as hard with your own style at the start, and just see what's going on, and then figure out what the best approach is, you know. Yeah.
So we're going to change it up a little bit. So you started your own facility. Element, health and performance. So we probably have some listeners now that are, you know, they've gone through the image course, they now become personal trainers and potentially S&C, and they're like, you know, they're aspiring to, you know, open up their own facility. I guess in short, is there any kind of quick hit advice, because you're balancing S&C, you're balancing the general public, you're balancing running a business, having staff, as I mentioned at the start, changing nappies. You know, you got your life going on, but I mean, I guess for people who are really wanting to get in on their own, which is always the aspiring goal for a lot of S&C coaches, is there anything that, you know, that maybe you would have started, maybe the sequence of how you did stuff, or I mean, anything that you can, like a quick hitter for anybody that's thinking about it? Yeah,
I think like that, if you're a newly qualified or you're looking to get into the industry, it's the same as what I just talked about. The best thing you can do is find who are the good coaches, or, you know, if you're wanting to specialize in body composition or transformation, right, who are the go-to guys in your area, what are the go-to gyms in your area, and try and work there, you know, like because you will learn so much more working under them. And again, you have to kind of park your ego a little bit and eat a bit of humble pie and go off and do that. But you'll be such a better coach in the long term, because short term, everybody thinks, oh yeah, open my own gym, or, you know, maybe my parents have a garage, or I could build something out the side and put a squat rack in and I'll be amazing and I'll keep all the money for myself. But what happens in 3 years' time? You haven't really gone anywhere. You haven't really learned it. And, you know, so take the time to go under someone else and figure it out.
And what about the breakdown of like, because we love the hands-on, we love the practical element of training people, and in your case, you're treating people as well. But then the business side of it.
Yeah.
And I think where a lot of the S&C coaches or aspiring personal trainers, maybe they're a bit naive in the sense like of the whole business side. Is like, has that been a serious learning curve for you, or?
Massive learning curve, and like I got the idea because it's something I've always wanted to do. You're always accumulating knowledge of gym layout and stuff like that over the years, working in different facilities and different teams. So you kind of have a clear idea, right? If someone gave me a blank canvas, I know how I'd set it up. I know how I'd train people. I know how I'd process groups. I'd know what I want it to look like, all that type of stuff. Most physios working in pro sport or elite sport or anything like that are doing that, but then they've got a clinic running in the background, like their own private clinic, but they don't actually work there. They've got other therapists working there, but it's off the back of their name. He's the physio for Liverpool, so he must be good. He's never actually there, but it's enough to build it out. And I was going, well, why don't strength coaches do that, or why don't personal trainers do that, or that type of thing? So that's kind of where the idea was born out of. And the big thing, and I knew from the start, I was like, I know what it takes equipment-wise to go in the gym. I know how I'd lay it out. So when I got serious about doing it, I spent no time planning the actual gym. It was all the business end of things. Because I was like, picking out the squat racks is the fun part.
Easy, the fun part, Christmas come early type thing.
That's you'd have that done in 5 minutes. Do you know what I mean? So I purposely went that the hard stuff and the stuff that I'd no clue about. I'm lucky that I'm in a family that's surrounded by accountants, so they're great. So I was able to be like, okay, I've got this idea for a coffee shop. You put it down on paper, and they go, no, that looks crap. And I go, well, it's not actually a coffee shop, it's a gym. They go, it doesn't matter what it is. That's a crap business idea. So that's what you've got to look at, I suppose, and that's where people run to the squat racks and run to the dumbbells and run to I'm going to get a leg extension, I'm going to get this and that, without actually, well, how much are you going to charge per session? How many members are you going to have?
The capacity,
exactly. And the biggest struggle for me has been managing your coaching hours, and like I say, because I do treatments as well, my treatment hours, and then trying to run the business. And it's been really tough.
So if you guys didn't hear it, it's Element Health and Performance. Get yourselves down there, learn from this man. He's going to do the job. Okay, so my last question, all right, and this is the kind of question I'm gonna ask pretty much every guest that we get on, and it's kind of the same question. So if you could go back in time 10 years, knowing what you know now, is there anything you would do differently in terms of your journey within the fitness industry or S&C? Anything that jumps out at you? Go.
This is probably going to be a really boring answer, but to be honest with you, I wouldn't change anything at all. I'm really, really happy with where I am. I'm beyond grateful for the experiences I've gained, the people I've met and worked with, the people I've met and coached. I'm so lucky that I've got friends for life, like I say, that have been, yourself included, colleagues, and then also players that I would still talk to and I would still message and that type of thing. And it's reciprocal. You're not just the creepy old coach that messages people to say good luck in the games, that kind of way.
Not yet.
So there has been loads that I would change. There's loads I do differently. But when I kind of weigh it all up, I go, well, if a bad thing happened somewhere along the line that led to a good thing, there's situations I'd look back at and go, right, if I was in that situation or coaching that person again, I'd do it differently. But at the same time, everything has led me to where I am now. I've had amazing experience. I'm not currently working in team sport. I've one of the hardest things has been learning to say no to things, because you want to do everything. You love what you do, so you hate saying no to things and you don't want to disappoint people. But the last 2 years I've had to learn to say no, and I've had to probably turn down more work than I would like. But it's because you just need to narrow your focus. And it's not that I don't want to do that stuff. It's just right now I need to put everything into one basket. And then when that grows to a level where I can step out and do the other stuff that I want to do, great. But learning to say no is a tough one.
Learning to say no.
And another great one that I kind of resonated this week was, if you try and make everybody happy, you'll be miserable yourself.
Yeah.
So sometimes you have to upset a few people.
Yeah.
And when I say upset a few people, just by saying no, like, you know, can you come and work with this team? I'm actually full at the moment. I don't have time to go. I'd love to go and work with your team, but I can't be in two places at one time.
I mean, that's good advice. I mean, because we spoke about this kind of similar thing before. Is like when, even though you're an S&C coach, people always say, "Oh, look, hey, could you write me up a program?" You know what I mean? And people, you know, it's your livelihood, and people think it's, you know, you just do it for nothing. Like I said, we said you wouldn't ask your accountants to, you know, who you know is your friend, to do your books for nothing. But,
and put it back on the person that's asked you that question.
Yeah,
you know, ask them what did they do. You know, okay, like, I work in Centra. Okay, well, can you give me a free breakfast roll? Not a chance. If you're eating breakfast rolls, it's different problems. But you know what I mean? When you put it back on them, then they'll understand, because everybody does that. Everybody thinks you just go around with 50 programs in your pocket. Oh, I must get a program off you. And put it back on them and say, oh, yeah, I must get you to do my tax returns, or must get free petrol next time you're working in the garage, you know, and they'll go, what are you talking about? I can't do that. And then people appreciate it more, yeah.
Darren, listen, thank you so much for coming on and having a chat. It's been excellent. So again, Darren Kenna, Element Health and Performance, okay? If you guys are looking for a knowledge bomb, come down and see this man. All right.
Cheers. Thanks for having me on. Much appreciated. Talk to you soon.